This is going to be a how there is 2 model video specifically for taking any armor that you have, as long as you have the assets, taking it from Blender all the way over to Helldivers 2. I'm going to be pretty much taking you from the entire beginning all the way to the end, which includes the manifest making process and all of that to kind of deploy your mod into a mod manager. I'm going to be having screencast keys on the bottom left so that if you don't know what I'm doing, that I'm also going to be trying to explain what I'm doing as well for anyone who's new to Blender. I'm going to start the video off by assuming that this is your first time modding the game, so I'll go through installation and tools. Everything that I use, I'll put it into the description of this video, and I'm also going to have timestamps for specific parts because this is just going to be a long form video. To begin with, we're going to have to install the SDK for Helldivers 2 into Blender. So the SDK is going to be here on this, on Box of Biscuits GitHub. It's going to be the SDK Community Edition. All you have to do is just go to the releases and download the latest release. Click on this and then download it to wherever you go. I already have mine downloaded, so I'm just going to show you how to install in Blender. So in Blender, you want to go to File. Actually, not File. You want to go to Edit, Preferences, and then Add-ons. So right now, I'm using Blender 4.3 for this project. And I'm going to click on Add-ons to this drop-down arrow and then Install from disk. And then you're going to navigate to where your specific thing is. So for me personally, I put all my SDK installations in here. So I'm just going to type in SDK, and my latest release, I believe I'm using. So all you have to do is you just double click and then install from disk. Once you hit the install from disk, you're going to see, at least for 4.3 Blender, it will automatically enable, and it should just be. And then say preferences so that whenever you launch Blender, it'll always be enabled. And this is what we call the viewport screen, which is just kind of like the main layout. If I press the N key, it'll open up all these tabs, and the SDK menu is going to be specifically in the modding tab. So I mentioned before that I'm using specifically Blender 4.3. You can see up here it's 4.32. I have Blender installed on Steam. So on Steam, I have it installed. Choose my type. I'm going to go to Properties and then going to Game Versions and Betas. And then I have 4.3 installed. The SDK will only work for Blender versions 4.0 with soft support to 4.3. So if you have any other versions, the SDK will not work. So to begin with, you're going to have this kind of menu right here. Quickly everything out. So it's going to show up like this. You're going to want to navigate to Settings, and you're going to want to click on here, Change File Path. And you're basically just going to navigate to your data file path for your Helldivers 2. If you don't know where that is, the easiest way to go is to go to Helldivers 2 on Steam, go to Properties, Install Files, Browse, and then copy this right here. To copy that path, you just Control V it, paste it in here, and then navigate to your data folder, and then press Change File Path. And then once you've done that, you have officially installed the SDK. So from here, the basic parameters, how to use the SDK. Whenever you start Blender up, you want to click the star icon. This basically just loads what we call the boot archive, which is the base patch archive. And from here, you're going to want to click on new patch so that you have a new modded patch loaded. And then you want to load whatever kind of stuff you want to mod. So specifically for this armor mod I'm doing DP53. I'm going to type in to here, the search found archives. I'm just going to type in DP53. And I want the armor and the helmet, so I'm going to click both these. Now, in the event that you don't have your specific item in the search found archives, you need to click on this magnifying glass and then type in the archive ID. Most of the archive IDs that we do have are on the spreadsheet for Helldivers 2. So for example, if there's a new armor set or a new weapon that got released for Warborn recently, it most likely won't be put into found archives yet because that's something we update. So let's say, for example, the Warbond just came out and the weapon has not been put into found archives. Usually day one, I will put them into the spreadsheet. So let's say, for example, it was just the release of the Siegebreaker's Warbond and the hammer is not in the found archives. If I want to load the hammer, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to load the archive ID from the spreadsheet, copy it, and I just paste it in here. And I press OK. And you'll see that it'll load it in here. You do have to use the magnifying glass if you're on specifically the slim version of the game, because the slim version of Helldivers 2 doesn't have these archive kind of unpacked. They have these things called bundles, which is basically just all the archives compressed into a specific folder. So that's why you need to use the magnifying glass option. Okay, so let me just unload all these again. I'm just gonna archive 53. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to load in the stuff that I want for this. So I'm going to then call it. I have to keep myself organized, so I'm just going to do this real quick. Okay. So all I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go to this, go to unit. So in the SDK, a unit is basically mesh and the armature of a model. So this is the mesh, which is just like the skin of the object basically. And then the armature is the bones, what kind of moves it. So for example, the helmet is attached to the head bone. So wherever the head moves on the character, this helmet mesh is going to move with it. I don't need the armature, so I'm just going to delete it after. And then I'm just going to pretty much rename this for myself. Now I'm going to do the armors. And then I'm going to delete all the armature. So a really easy way for me to do that is I just hide all this real quick. If I use, I'm currently in box select mode right now. So up here in the top left, if I press W, it changes my selection mode. I use box select for everything. And then if I do shift left click, I can do multi-select. And I just press to delete. One thing to note is my settings for import. I'm currently not importing materials and I'm importing group 0. So what this means is that there's a thing in game design called an LED or I forget specifically what it's called, but basically it's a type of mesh that is used for when you're a specific distance away from it, you are going to see a lower level of detail. So yeah, that's what it's called, LED level detail. So pretty much when you're importing with the import group 0, you're importing specifically with only lot 0, which is the highest quality mesh. And we can see what this looks like if I import the other stuff and I press the wrong button. So if I import the helmet with all the LODs, you can see how it's LOD2, LOD0, LOD1, LOD3. I don't think the helmets do this very well, so let me do weapon. Or actually a scope is a lot more better to look at. And this also brings me to another point. If you try to load something in, you can't load it. This is because it's a static mesh, which means that it just doesn't have any weights attached to it. So just turn on the import static mesh option, and when you click on it, it'll load this time. So if we look here, lens, don't care about that. So you can see how this is LED 0, this is LED 1, and then this is the technically LED 3. You'll see how the level of detail gets lower and lower. And if I go up here and turn my statistics on, you can see how the total poly count for this gets lower and lower as you go. So this one's 1,400 vertices, 600 vertices, and then 400 vertices. So LEDs are pretty much a optimization feature for games so that even if you're super far away from something, it's not going to impact your game performance as much as if you were super close to it. So that's LEDs. I have also removed gore meshes. So as of right now for this video, gore meshes don't really work for armor mods because anytime you import and export a model for Helldivers 2, your model is always going to get stretched when you get blown up and turn into gore and limbs. So for this purpose, I'm just going to turn gore meshes off. A gore mesh kind of looks like this. You'll see here how on the arm it's got like this extra kind of tidbit on here. Pretty much all that the remove gore mesh setting does is that when the arm imports, it will import just like this. That's what that setting does. And then import armature is pretty self-explanatory. It just imports the rig that the mesh comes with for that specific unit file. And then I'll go over export options later when we get to that part. So for now, go back here to my parts. So specifically for this, I'm going to be doing the Brawny body type. And one of the ways to tell what body type is what is you click on the body part, you go to here to the object properties and then custom properties. If it doesn't tell you what the body type is, like how you see here just has the object ID and nothing else, which is, I think this entire armor set actually has this issue. So there's actually a bad example. Grab a different one. Paragon. Okay. So Paragon, go over here, custom properties. You'll see here in the customization body type, you can tell and see it says slim, right? So I know that this is the lean body type. And if I click on this other one, it says stocky, which is the brawny body type. And then also for the newer armor sets specifically that are coming out, they'll be also labeled on their actual mesh. So this is called stocky, called slim. So that's really easy to tell which one's which. And specifically for body parts, male and female are going to be the arms, the waist, this kind of undergarment part. I call it connections because it's kind of like the undersuit, underbody. And then you have the chest, and then the thighs. There will sometimes also be accessories that will be for both male and female. And then these specific body parts are, and then shoulders as well. So shoulder left, shoulder right. Those will all be male or female specific or brawny specific. And then these are the body parts that are going to be shared between both body types, which is the legs, the shin armor, and then the forearms. So when you're looking for specific body types, so I'm going to be doing brawny, I need to make sure that I'm only getting the brawny specifically of these body parts. So I'm going to go back to my DP53. So this one has shoulders, so because this doesn't have any labeling of any sort, the easiest way to tell if something is a brawny or lean type is just the size of it. So lean is always going to be smaller. So I hide that with the H key. This is lean because it's smaller. Lean again, smaller. I hide this, the smaller one is lean. Okay. Hide this, lean arm. Connections. Waist. And then this one's a little hard to tell for the thighs. So I don't really know, like, oh, is it these thighs or is it these thighs that are the male ones? And at this point, if you cannot tell which one's which, the easiest way to figure this out is to just test it in game. So for example, I'm going to take this ID 643 and I'm going to duplicate it. So there's two ways to copy something in Blender. There's the Control-C, Control-V method, and there's the Shift-D method. So I'm doing Shift-D specifically because what this does is that this makes me another version of the object. It is the same thing, but it's not going to copy things like the material and the textures attached to it, which is important. Because if you look at this, if I do Control-C, Control-V instead, you'll see when I click on this, I now have this material, but with a period 001 attached to the end of it, which is bad because it starts to bloat my blend file. So whenever I'm duplicating something, I always use the Shift-D key. So from here, take this ID, and we're going to use the method to make something invisible. So if I go to edit mode with the tab key, or you can use the options up here. I'm going to use tab or control tab, which lets you pull up this window. Edit mode, and then I'm going to want to select everything with the A key, and then pressing M, which is merge at center. And then I'm going to save this unit. No attribute node. Oh yeah, don't save. Okay, so I'm just going to turn off the autosave unit material. Yeah, okay. And if you want to see what you have in your patch at this current time when you're making something, if you click this check mark right here, it will only bring up stuff that's in your patch right now. So you can see right now in my patch, all I have is this specific unit for DP53 that's saved right now. I'm going to go over here real quick. I'm going to deploy, wipe out my entire list real quick. And I'll show you when I get in game. So from here to kind of deploy your mod, patch, whatever, to your game, you just press the right patch button, and it's going to automatically send a patch 00 group to your data folder. So if I look at my data folder here, I go to my date modified, see that my new patch was just created in here, which is the test patch we're using to make sure that we know which thigh, if it's brawny or lean. So I'll show you that when I get in game. Okay, I'm in game now, and I'm just going to go to my armory screen, and I'm just going to check to see which one got deleted. So it looks like I did find the brawny specific thighs, so that is a good test. So I'm just going to my game now. So we now know that this ID 643 is the brawny specific thighs. I'm going to keep 64, but I'm going to delete the other one. And then for organization purposes, I'm just going to rename everything. So I'll be right back once I rename everything. I've now renamed everything, and then this is just how I rename my schemata. So the forearms, the helmet, leg, shin, those are all shared between both the body types. Then I have the Brawny specific body types. I just put a label of a parentheses M on it for male. I'm gonna just hide this for a second. And then the second thing you want to do is for armors, and you're gonna want to do this for every armor you have, you're gonna want to load interior 2, and you're gonna want to grab something called the Helldivers 2 avatar, which is this thing. So this thing is pretty much the base model that is used for every single armor set in the game. So this is the rig and armature that is used for every armor set. And then I'm going to delete the lights. And just rename this. I already actually have a Helldivers 2 avatar over here, so I'm just going to bring this open. And the reason why you want to bring this in is going to be for your posing your model, and you're going to also need this avatar rig for when you start modding over your armor parts, because each armor body part for a specific part of the body only has a access to specific bones. So for example, this shoulder pad has access to these named bones right here. But let's say, for example, you have a body part that, and this is going to be more prevalent on things like the arms here. So you see how this arm has all these body parts here. Let's say your arm goes all the way into like the torso here, and you need access to the bones in here. What the avatar allows you to do is it allows different body parts of the model to have access to the bones that are normally present on the avatar. And I'll show you more when we start doing weight painting, but this also is pretty much just a good kind of foundation to have. Just always load the avatar and avatar rig in at all times. So from here, I like to do with the avatar is I like to go to my object properties, go to viewport display, and then turn it to wire. And I'm just going to hide I'm actually going to keep that here. And then from here, you're just ready to start doing what I call resizing and posing for your model. I'm going to bring up the Halo Spartan real quick. Control S, always remember to save your blend file every once in a while, so if something catastrophic happens, you have a save somewhere. And then I'm going to pull up the rig. So an important thing to note, if your model does not have a rig on it, I would highly suggest finding one that does, because if your model doesn't have a rig on it, you're going to have to manually rig it yourself in order for this stuff to work. And I actually had posed this earlier, the Helldivers 2 model. So I'm just going to really quickly just reset this. Scale. So this is what it looks like normally. And from here, what I want to do is I just want to, same orientation. So I'm going to click on the armature. I'm going to do R to rotate. I can use my keyboard to type out whatever I want. Since I want them to rotate left and right, I'm going to use the Z axis. And then from here, I'm trying to scale him down. Now, what I want to do is I want to scale the model based on the arms and the legs. What I mean by this is when I'm scaling this, I want the arms to be kind of in the same general location. And I want the kind of legs, the glutes here to be in the same location as well. And this is important for rotational points, basically. So like you want the arm joint to be in the same kind of position as the arm joint, the Helldivers model. And if I turn the rig on here, you can kind of basically like match your model to what the Helldivers 2 skeleton is. So you can see here that my shoulder's pretty much perfect. when compared to the arm. The leg is a little off, but it's not that bad. So the sizing looks pretty good. And then I just want to kind of line them up so that the arms are kind of in the middle of each other. You'll see how the arms are kind of lined up here. And then from here, you want to take your skeleton. We're going to go to pose mode. And you're going to essentially move it. Now, depending on which kind of model you have and the skeleton is attached with, if you go up here to the top right and you click this X button to mirror, it will move both sides of the skeleton pretty much. So if I move this arm, it should have moved this. This model doesn't have that, so I'm going to have to manually pose my model to the Helldivers 2 model here. So I'm just going to show you on one arm and one leg. Just going to do this. Look at it from each side. Don't do that. But get a little. That's pretty much good. For the arm, Helldivers 2 arms tend to be longer than most other game arms. So in this scenario, I like to kind of increase the size of the arm by just a little bit. This can be anywhere from like a 15% to like a 25% increase. So you kind of just choose based on your opinion what looks best. Most of the Halo stuff works pretty well if you just do like a 10% increase. I'm just going to increase this by 10. So I press the S key to scale and then 1.1, about 10% for the entire arm. And then I'm going to line this up so the elbow is good. Good. And wrist. And then from here, you'll see how the hand's just a wee bit too big. I'm going to decrease the size of the elbow by about 0.9. And then now you can see how a little bit closer. The hand is still just a little too big. Now I'm going to make the hand probably 0.9 again. Yeah, there you go. Rotate the hand into place. This is a really quick job just because I already have a setup from before. And then you'll see here that I have to do it pretty much on both sides. So you just repeat it on both sides until you have your skeleton basically set up to where it needs to be. So I'm going to reload my old save real quick. Remove the avatar. Rig. And then if I drag this open, I can open a new window. I'm trying to go to Asset Browser. Unassigned. Current file. Here we go, unassigned. Then I have this HD2 pose. If I go over here. There you go. And if we just compare it to the avatar again, you'll see that it's pretty much one-to-one to the avatar. Hide that. And that is going to be the posing resizing section of this guide. I'm going to be going over a different setup as well as what I do for models called my cleanup post process. This is a completely optional step. You can skip this step if you want, but I'm going to do it because I like to do this for all my models because it just makes it look better in game. And you'll see the difference when I go through this process. So the first thing I want to do though is I want to save this kind of pose so that I can go back to it. So if I go to pose mode, which if I click on the skeleton, and if I just press tab, it goes to edit mode, but if I press shift tab, it goes to, or control tab, it'll go to pose mode. I go over here into my asset browser, I can go to asset. If I press control C, copy my pose, I can go over here, create new pose, and okay. I don't remember how to do this. Okay, so basically you just get your pose, you have everything selected, or just, if I had nothing selected, just press A to select everything. Control C, just be safe. Go to asset in asset browser and then create new pose. And pretty much it'll copy your pose over the asset browser. So let's say if I just like messed this up completely, just moved everything around and everything. When I press A and I select it again, it'll move it back to position. So I pretty much just need this so that I can go back to it later, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to reset my pose. I'm going to close this real quick. And we're going to move on to what I call the cleanup stage. So the cleanup stage is basically if I change my viewport setting from viewport shading over to solid mode from material preview, you kind of see here how the mesh looks kind of mushy like clay. This is what we call normal vectoring, and it's what's used to like determine kind of like how light bounces off of something. If I was to put this model into the game right now, when the light bounces off of it, it's going to look really mushy in game, and the light is going to kind of weirdly bounce off. So to fix this, you kind of have to manually clean up the model. So I'm going to show you an example here. So we'll do the helmet here. Click on the helmet, go to edit mode. Then what I want to do is apply a modifier over here actually first, called the weighted normals. And I use this and keep sharp. What this does is that this essentially allows me to pretty much remap how the normal vectoring for the vertices is going to be. So you'll see how if I turn it off, it looks like that, and then when I turn it back on, it looks significantly better. But I'm going to have to do some manual cleanup. If you have this issue when you turn on weighted normals, it kind of has this weird like polygonal shading on it. This is because it has custom splits or custom normal splits on it. If I go over to data, geometry data, if I clear custom split normals data, it should fix it. So I'm going to weighted normals. If that doesn't fix it, what you need to do is you need to go over here and apply a smooth modifier. So normals, smooth by angle. So I'm going to do this and I'm going to copy this for every single kind of object that's here. So I Control L, copy modifiers. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply this. What it's going to do is that this is going to cause it to do this, where these blue lines are called mark sharp, which is what we're going to use to clean up the model. And I'm going to just pretty much press A in edit mode, press 2, so I'm in edge selection. If I right click, I can do clear sharp. And you'll see that removes it. So if I reapply weighted normals again, you'll see that the polygonal shading's gone. From here, I'm trying to really quickly apply move angle to all of these. Okay, so focusing here on the helmet. So if we go over here to weighted normals, and you'll see how it looks better, but it's going to have like these kind of like weird splits initially. This is because this is what we call a mirrored mesh, where it's kind of like the same on both sides. And the thing is that they are currently split from each other. So me personally, what I like to do is I just press A, M, and then merge by distance. And what this is going to do is that it's going to merge all the parts that are kind of like next to each other. And what it did is it made this all one solid block for parts that were connected to each other. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to move these two into a different collection. That's easier for me to handle. Collection 5. Okay. This is gonna let me do is I can hide this, and I can still see this in my collection 5. Over here, got the decals and then the helmet. So what I do from here is I click everything again, press 2, and I do mark or set sharpens by angle. And what this is going to do is that this is going to give us a framework for what to base our mark sharp off of. This does a pretty good job most of the time, but you do need to kind of look at it closely and kind of clean it up. So there's certain parts of this I don't like it where it auto marks sharp. And you can also use the, what is this called? Material preview to see where you should be marking sharp. So right here, I don't want this to be sharp. That's kind of part of the top of the helmet here. Look again. And I want this bottom part to be more sharp. So you see how like I redid that mark sharp so that makes more sense. Shouldn't be sharp. And I'm pretty much going to be doing this for the entire model. So I'll finish up the helmet first, and then I'll show you on one more example. And all I'm doing is I'm just going to be looking at the model and making sure that the parts that need to be sharp are cleaned up. Oh, separate map. I'm actually going to really only have this part showing. That. Oh. Now, there's no like best way to mark sharp. Every person's going to mark sharp kind of like in their own way. So as you kind of develop yourself as a, I guess, artist, you'll figure out like ways that you like to mark sharp versus how other people do it. So don't worry too much about this if you're like doing it correctly or not. As you get more experience doing it, you'll eventually learn like, oh, this is, a better way to do it versus how you were doing it before. Yeah, I think that's good. Double check everything. Okay, let's hide those, go back to here. What is that? And when you want to double check your work, you can go back to solid mode here, and this is the easiest way to tell what something will look like when light reflects off of it in game. You can see how this looks a lot better compared to before. Okay, and I think that does it. So now you can see here we have this pretty much cleaned up model. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to put it back in this old collection. Yep. Okay. And there you go. You can see how this is much cleaner compared to what it was before, which was like this mushy mess. So that is doing marking sharp and weighted normals for a independent object. We're going to do a mirrored object now. So in order to not do double the work that we want to, when we do things like shoulder pads, knee pads, stuff that's mirrored on the other side of the body, we only want to do one. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to specifically do the right side of the body. So let's put this back in the collection 5 real quick. 5, rest. And from here, I'm just going to put weighted normals on here. And sharpens my angle. Or actually, merge it, then sharpens my angle. And then from here, just clean it up as I go. I actually... Oh, that's weird. Okay, so you do want to be careful when you do merge by distance. So for some reason, this isn't feet. I'm going to actually go back real quick. My preferences. Merge by distance. Be careful when you merge by distance because sometimes it'll merge too many things. So when you do merge by distance, I actually want to do 0.1. You'll see how I didn't merge like everything together. Looks a lot cleaner. So here, I'm just going to fix this up. actually might manually mark this. Okay. Sometimes in some cases the manual mark is not very good, so you have to kind of do it by yourself. Eh, why is no, it's not interesting. There we go. Custom split normals is being make. But I like the way this looks, so I'm just going to delete that. And then from here, what I want to do is I'm just going to mirror on whatever axis is going to put it on the other side of the model. So the Y in this case, apply. And then in this case, if it is a little off center, you can reset the origin point before you apply the mirror. So let's do this real quick. If I press Shift C, I put the point of origin to the exact middle of the blend file. If I go here, set origin, the 3E cursor, puts it over here. I can do X, Y, Y, and that is pretty much in the same spot. I'm just going to delete the other one since that's old. And then now I have my two shoulders. What should I call this? That selection should be, yep, okay. I'm just going to double check and make sure that when I move the model, it does on the correct arm. So you see how the other shoulder isn't correctly weighted to the other arm. I click on the shoulder again, Control Tab, away paint mode. On this specific armature, scroll through, we'll see that's the BR upper arm is what's controlling the shoulder pad. So I'm just gonna lock this. And because I know this is only the only weight that's used for this skeleton on this body part, I'm just gonna delete everything and remove it from myself. I'm gonna make a new group and pretty much rename this to L. If the armature is done correctly, both the left and right are just interchangeable with R and L. In this case, what I want to do is I want to select the shoulder pad. I'm going to have weight 1.0, assign it to L, remove it from R, so that now they're both assigned to their respective arms. If I go back here and I move this again, there we go, it moved correctly. So that is pretty much how I do mesh cleanup for the vertex normals. I'm going to do it for the entire model, and then I will be back with the next step. I have now finished doing my sharp marking and weighted normals, and you can see that the model is now very defined. It looks like putty. If I go back here, I open up for Spartans and just really quickly move this. You can tell barely the complete difference having a unpolished, unprocessed model versus taking the time to actually completely sharp mark and do everything. So you'll see here, it just looks like that. And then if I select everything over here, go to edit mode, you can see how I have done all the sharp marking on this model. So it really does take a lot of time to do it, but the quality of your model will be significantly improved over just, like I said, just using this. So now that we are here, we can now move on to the materials and textures. So in most cases, you will have textures that are already complete. And what I mean by this is, for example, let's just go to one of my textures here. For pick this railgun here. Most models will come in these textures, what we'll call the color map, the normal map, and then maybe there's a PBR. And basically, this is already pretty much done for you. But the problem is that sometimes there are going to be textures where they're not readily made like this already. And an example of this would be for Halo, which is why I'm using this Halo Reach model. So if we go over here, I'm in the UV editor and then the shader editor over here. If you take a look here, let me just click on the helmet here, and I click on one of these textures, you'll notice that it's not colored, and I do have the normal map, but I'm missing something, mainly the roughness and the metallic. Because for this specific model, I'm going to be using what we'll call the advanced material shader. So if we go to the wiki here, advanced. For advanced specifically, I'm going to need a normal map, ambient occlusion, roughness, metallic, and then color emissive. If I go over the textures, I can go and view all these. So for advanced, I'm going to need the base color, normal, and then if my part has emissive, I need emissive, and then if it has metallic, and then roughness as well. In my experience, at least with Halo Reach, there's no metallic map, so I'm not going to worry about that. and only a very few things need emissive, mainly these little lights on the armor, and then this light up here as well, which I'm gonna have to manually make. In this case, I don't have access to these textures. They're currently packed into the blend file, so I don't have the actual raw image itself. So in order to actually get the raw image, we're going to have to do something called baking. And I'm going to be baking using something called Principal Baker. It's a free plugin for Blender. You install it the same way you install the SDK. And basically what you need to do is you need to have another window open. So to make a new window, you just go over to the top corner of any of your other viewports. You just kind of drag it open. And to get to the shader one, now here's Shader Editor. And then once you're in the screen, press N, and you'll get access to here. And then Principal Baker will be on the side. In this case, I'm going to very quickly save. And now I'm going to check my model and see exactly what I have on here. So I have the helmet. I don't have a visor. I'm going to remove all unused slots. Okay, there we go. Sure. Okay, so I have two different materials on here, but you can see that if I look at the UV map, which is again over here, UV editor, if I click on edit mode and I look, if I go over here and I have the material section selected, go to select and select, even though it's two different materials, they are both on the same UV map. So when I bake this out, I don't have to do or mess anything. I can bake it out together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly make sure the UV I have selected is the correct one. There's only one UV map on here. If there's multiple UV maps, you need to make sure that the UV map you're clicking on is the correct one. So for example, maybe this thing has like 3 UV maps, and maybe this other map is like 0, like this. And if you check it, you'll see that it's completely messed up and everything. So when you bake it out, it's going to look like that. You want to make sure that you have the correct UV map selected. So over here in Principal Baker, what I'm going to do is, Halo Reach is really finicky, so I'm going to specifically only do, that. I'm going to do color and normal. And then my settings. This is where you're going to have to choose how much quality or how high quality you want your images to be. I like to keep my stuff pretty optimized, and I only put detail, very high detail on things that require it. So for example, things like these shoulder pads, I make them 512. Maybe the helmet, I'll do like a 1K texture. And the reason for this is because textures, when you every time you double them, you actually quadruple the size of the texture file. So a 512 megabyte shader in Helldivers 2 is going to be 1 megabyte. 1K, 4 megabytes, 2K, 16, and then a 4K is going to be 64 megabytes per material. So let's say, for example, I baked all these in 4K for some reason. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. That's already 384 megabytes just on textures alone if I made them all 4K. So that's why it's kind of important to make sure that you are aware of what you're doing in terms of how large you're baking these textures out. And if you have a texture, right, and you don't need to bake it, you want to make sure that you are either downsizing them so that they aren't, you aren't not using the full 4K texture. However, this is completely your choice. If you want to use a 4K texture, that's up to you. It's just be wary that you're going to increase the file size a lot. So here If I press N in the UV editor, I can actually see what the original source size is, which is 512, so I'm going to keep it to 512. And then in the Principal Baker settings, I'm going to go over here, output, and I'm just going to put it into my specific baking, which is this GIMP batch process. Accept. And then color normal. And then before I do anything, I'm just going to save in case baking dies. And then I'm also going to go over here to my render settings and make sure I'm on cycles and I'm on GPU. I am. So with my specific thing selected, I'm going to click on here and I'm going to do single batch specifically because I only have one UV map. If you have multiple UV maps, you might have textures and shader nodes that are connected to each other and it will combine to a specific UV map. So you may need to use combine. This is going to be purely based off of whatever game model you're taking this from. So I can't help you. You're going to have to figure it out yourself. So for me, Halo Reach, one UV map. And then from here, I'm just going to click Bake. Not enabled for rendering. I have to go over here and make sure it's enabled for rendering. All the camera icons are enabled. Do this real quick for all my stuff. Arms, knee guard. Not using decals. Okay, save again just in case, and then bake. And you see I crashed, so I'm going to really quickly reopen Blender again. Okay, let's try this again. Click on the bake setting, and all my settings are good. PNG. Ah. Better range, prepare material for back. I'm going to quickly check. Okay, so it errored out, but I did get my color, and I actually got my normal map out. Try this again, try to get the color out. Bake color, okay. So what it's currently doing is I think it's only baking out the visor right here. Yeah. What I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this real quick. I'm going to remove this material. And I'm going to bake the color again in the normal. That. Bunch of errors again. Okay. And it looks like my normal did bake out, which is good. And then I'm going to color and try and bake it out again. I need to remember how to fix it. In the event that Principal Baker is not working, which in this case, I figured out that for Halo Reach shader specifically, it will not work. You can use Blender's innate baking system. So to do that, I'm just going to first add a new texture, Shift A, type in texture, or image texture specifically. Click on new. I'm going to set the size, so 512 is what we're baking at. Alpha, new image, cool. Have one right here. And what I'm going to do is over here on the render settings, I'm going to scroll down to bake. It's going to be on combined by default. What you want to do is you want to go to diffuse, turn off direct and indirect, and have color. Due to image texture. And then I like to set my margin. This is usually at 16. I like to put my margin to 4 pixels, so it's not too crowded. After that, you want to have both your mesh selected and then the texture, image texture in the shader selected. Click bake. And then once you've gotten it, it's going to come out like this. And then from here, you just go up here to image. I'm going to save a copy. I'm going to go put it over here. Come near color and replace this. Now I have my normal map and I have my color. Name these. We have these two textures. I don't have an emissive on here, so I'm not going to need it. And then I want to get roughness. So based on my prior experience, I know that Halo Reach has roughness, and it's actually inside of this is what we call the diffuse map, which is what they use to, it's like the base color map they use to color in Halo Reach, and they have a thing called an ID mask. And this is a method used so that when you have like an armor customization color system in your game, instead of having a bunch of textures of different colors, you just have this white texture, which then gets colored by this ID mask. And you can see here in the Halo Reach shader, if I go and just kind of drag this around, you'll see how this is how basically the Halo Reach color customizer worked. I'm going to go over here, click on this, on the diffuse. I'm going to save this as a copy. Back over here in my GIMP. Save as image. I go back over here, and I'm going to use GIMP. This is my primary program for picture manipulation. It's a free program. Highly recommend it if you don't have something like Photoshop, or if you have Photoshop, use whatever you want, but for me, I'm a free user, so I'm going to use GIMP. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this into GIMP. And I'm going to go over here to Colors, Components, Decompose. Decompose with RGBA. And if I look at this here, so with Halo Reach, what I like to do specifically is I like to save this alpha as the metallic. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to save this as metallic. And then immediately after that, I'm going to go over here to colors. I'm going to invert it, and I'm going to save this as roughness. Okay, and now I have the textures I need for advanced. I am not using ambient occlusion, so I don't need it. And I'm not using emissive for this part of the material, so I don't need that either. For advanced, I need to have the normal and roughness combined together. So to do this, I'm going to do, and actually before that, normal maps. There are two different normal maps used in games, OpenGL, DirectX. You go over your textures real quick. You'll see the difference between the two. So this is an OpenGL map. This is a DirectX map. To tell the difference between the two, OpenGL looks the way it should. So this thing right here, this is a helmet camo netting. Those are ropes on top of the helmet. They look like ropes on top of the helmet. DirectX, they look like they're indents in the helmet. So when you get your normal map, you want to make sure that you have the OpenGL version. If you don't know how to convert it or you have the wrong version, all you have to do is bring this in the GIMP, select everything, deselect everything but the green map, and then invert it. And that's how you basically are able to switch between OpenGL and DirectX. Principal Baker bakes in OpenGL, so I don't have to worry about this right now, so I can just leave it like this. And if you're still unsure, you can double check your material and your texture, make sure you're correct. So this is a really easy one. If I look at this ridge here, this thing is kind of this part right here. It's poking out, not in. If I go over here and look at it, it's poking out. I know that I have OpenGL. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make a advanced shader. I'm going to convert this. So to make this and combine this with the roughness map, I'm going to go over the colors, decompose components, decompose, RGBA, and then I'm going to take the roughness over here, put it in here. So I have my red, green, blue roughness, components, compose, RGBA, all set up. My new normal map with roughness in the alpha. Control Shift E. What I'm going to do, I'm going to save it in here, name it, so it's OpenGL R. And then very important, make sure you click here to save color values from transparent pixels. This is important because if you don't, you lose color data. And I'm going to show you what happens when that happens. So let's say, for example, I just have a bunch of black on my alpha, right? For my roughness, and I compose it again. I got this. Okay, let's save it, RGBA, compose. And then I don't save it with color. Now let's go back over here. So let's compare the two. Here's the one where I save with transparent. If I decompose it to double check and make sure it's all good, you'll see that all the layers have been preserved. They're all fine. Now, if I take this one, which I didn't preserve, those, ooh, that's why it wasn't completely black. Let me do this again. Hardness 100. Okay. Just completely black this out. So let's compose, compose. Option not selected. Put this back in here. You can see right here on the channels, I'm missing stuff. My color data got destroyed. And if I double check and decompose it, you'll see how I'm completely missing like this entire middle area, because if my roughness map was black in that area and I didn't save the color data, it just you lose your color data. That's why it's important to make sure that when you're exporting these, that you're saving with color data from transparent pixels. Close that out. Now have our textures that are ready. I'm just going to move these over here real quick. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a SDK material. So first things first, I'm going to ensure that model's in the correct position before I do anything. Asset browser. And it crashed, okay. Back from my crash once again. Have my model. I'm going, and it's posed correctly. Just double check. Yep, posed correctly. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select everything, Shift D, move it to a different collection so it's easy to handle. And then I'm going to do two things. First, I'm going to hide this so that I don't have it visible anymore. I'm going to press Alt P, clear transforms, clear and key transformations, and then convert to mesh. What this does is it just completely removes it from my base, so it is no longer attached to the skeleton that was here before. So when I move the skeleton, it's not going to move the other part. So go over here, click. See if when I move the skeleton, my parts I duplicated are no longer attached to the skeleton. And if I move the skeleton around, it's not going to move those parts anymore. So now I'm just going to hide this again. So from here, we're going to make the SDK material. So modding. It has deleted itself. And to make a material, you need to have a patch made, so new patch. And then scroll down to the material section. I'm using an advanced shader, so advanced. Okay. For it to load a little. And then to make it easier for myself, I'm going to only show what's in the patch right now, which is this new material. And then over here to my material on my thing, I'm going to click on it. Something went wrong here. Change the material to this, which is 117, 117. And then from here, I'm going to input my textures. So normal AO roughness over here, drag and drop. Metallic, color emissive. And that is how you pretty much convert from baking all the way over to an HD2 shader. HD2 usable textures for the shader. And now pretty much what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through every single material I have on this model and convert them all to HD2 shaders. So I'll be back after I finish that. I am now done making all my SDK materials. See how everything has been transferred over pretty much to the material. I just missed one. Edit that real quick. But pretty much the next step after this is going to be weight painting. And because we have a model that already came with a rig, we don't really have to do a lot of weight painting. Because most of the time, other games have good weight painting, so you don't have to really touch it up at all in order for it to work properly. Save real quick. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to combine everything together. One big piece, except for the helmet. Helmet together. And then put the body together. This one. Okay. Okay. And then I'm just going to scroll through the list, make sure I got everything. Missed another one. Fine. Okay. now that should be everything. That's why you always want to double check, make sure everything's all good. Okay. That is officially now all good. So now we just have the helmet and we got the body. So for the helmet, because there isn't really any kind of changes you need to do, because it's not like a hood. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to vertex groups. I'm going to delete everything, and I'm just going to go to edit mode, select everything. Do Control G to add to a new group. Make sure the weight is 1, and I'm just going to call it head because the helmet's always on the head bone. If I go to weight paint mode, you'll see this is all red, so we don't have to worry about the helmet anymore. Now for this, we're going to rename everything, basically. So what I'm essentially going to do is I'm just going to go through every single weight that's on this model, and I'm going to pretty much convert it over to the Helldivers 2 model. And if you don't know what to rename your vertex groups, you can always check the avatar rig to see which one goes where. I have pretty much every single vertex group memorized, so I know where it goes where. So for example, this is going to be hips, and I'm pretty much going to just go down the entire list till I'm done. And sometimes you might have to go through and clean some stuff up. So for example, I don't like the way this was done, but maybe I think there's a group over here. I'm going to do first is I'm just going to lock every group that I see that's a part of the model that's actually weighted. And then after I get everything, I will start renaming. Okay. Once I've gotten all my groups that are weighted, I'm just going to delete all unlocked groups. So all I have are just weighted groups. Nothing's empty. Not to waste my time looking through all of them. Okay, so I'm going to start with the easy ones first, which are the fingers. Fingers are super easy since there's just 3 of them. And the label for it is pretty simple. So for right and lefties, it's always going to start with R underscore, or I believe that's called underscore. And then it's going to be the type of finger. So this is a ring finger. And then finger. And what part it is. So this is the last one. So it's ring finger 3. And you are going to essentially just do that for all the fingers. I'm actually going to chest, our hand twist, back to the finger. And what you're essentially going to do is you're just going to do this for every single group that's on your body. Just renaming it to whatever the Helldivers 2 equivalent is. Oops. Okay, I'll be back when I get these all renamed. So now all my weights and vertex groups are renamed, and you'll notice how I'll have a bunch of like duplicates in here, like hips. Here's hips and hips 001, elbow 002 and 1. And this is because the skeleton for the Halo Reach model has more bones than the Helldivers 2 skeleton, and we need to combine these so that they actually work with the Helldivers 2 skeleton. And this is really easy to do. So if I go over here to modifiers, click on press V, go to vertex mix. I'm going to put this to all and then add, and then duplicate this so I have basically a fresh one. I'm going to go to chest and then chest. And if I go and put my group on the chest, you'll see that it has now combined both of the groups into one. So what I need to do is I basically have to go through every single one of these. Next one, hips. Thigh in there. There's two of them. And then I'm pretty much just going to repeat this for every single step now. Hips, elbow. Elbow's done. Hips, elbow. Shoulder twist. Thighs. Neck. I think neck is the last one. Choose to roll through the. I got the knee. Yep, okay, I got the knees. So I've now pretty much mixed all the groups together to their respective parts. I'm going to quickly save this so that if I made a mistake, I can quickly revert back. And then from here, to apply all the modifiers at the same time, I'm just going to go here, convert to mesh, and it will apply every single modifier that was on here. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove every single duplicate that existed. And then I'm just going to quickly scroll through the entire list to make sure I didn't accidentally weight something that I wasn't supposed to. Just by briefly looking through, it should look fine. Okay, everything looks good. So from here, the entire model is now completely weighted to the Helldivers 2 model, and it's pretty much ready to go. I just have to put it onto an actual Helldivers 2 body part. So since we're testing initially, and we haven't actually cut the model up yet, we're just going to do a quick fitting test. To do this, first I'm going to replace the helmet. My helmet over here, join the two together. And then for me personally, when I cut the model up later, I only cut it into 4 parts for the main body, which is the connections, the arms, and then the waist. So for me personally, every other body part is just going to disappear. So these shoulders, and to make something invisible / disappear from the Helldivers 2 model, you have to make sure that there's no vertices of the mesh that are visible so that nothing renders, but something has to still be there for the game to calculate. So the easiest way to do this is to select your pieces you're going to make invisible. Go to edit mode, select everything, and then my screencast keys. I'll click crashed. Select everything with A, and then press M, and then merge at the center. Basically, this turns everything into a single vertex so that it doesn't render properly. And now I'm going to and then I don't use the legs either, so I'm going to make these full. Okay. Since I'm going to be doing a fitting test, I'm only going to need to replace one part, and I need the other parts to be invisible. Don't need these either. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to duplicate this, make these main parts invisible, and everything except for the connections I'm going to make invisible. This, and then delete this. Remove the materials off of it. Over here, and then I'm just going to pretty much join this entire thing over to that connections part. And then now we'll talk about export settings I mentioned way earlier. So I'm an old timer. I did this way before, and I'm used to it this way. These are the settings that are typically enabled by default. Me personally, I turn them off just because I'm used to it that way. So what this force 3 UV sets is basically the game will not render your model at all unless there's 2 or more UV maps on it. So when you go down here to UV maps, there needs to be at least 2 or 3. If you have this setting on, you don't have to worry about this at all. Just because I turn it off, I'm going to have to deal with it. So I need to make sure I duplicate my UV map so that I have 2 of them extra. So I have 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to do this for both my helmet and the body. And then from here, I'm just going to quickly duplicate this real quick. Put it back in the collection, save that for later. And then quickly make sure all my settings are good. You want to have auto loads on. And then ignore all this. Turn this on so that you actually save your material when you're actually patching. Okay. So quickly just going to make a new patch. I'm going to save my blend file. And then I'm going to select everything. And I'm going to click Save Units. I made a mistake. So I forgot to mention, because some body parts don't have all the bones, like I mentioned way earlier with the avatar, you need to make sure that on the modifiers, you need to have the avatar rig selected, because remember the avatar rig has every single bone that's available. And once you have that armature modifier, I'm just going to Control A to select everything, or A to select everything, then Control L, and then copy modifier so that all these modifiers have that same armature rig modifier. And then from here, I'm just going to go to units again. Attribute node. Okay, that's because I'm trying to save materials of the base game. So to fix that, I can just first save my 2 helmets with the autosave unit materials so that it saves the materials. And this might take a while depending on how many material you have on your actual model. I think this one has, I want to say like 10 or 12. Okay, that's saved. I'm going to turn this off now so I can save the other parts, which are invisible, which are these 4. If those, I actually need to save everything else here, so all these other body parts. And then from here, pretty much have all your textures, all the units, and all the materials are now saved. All you do, just press right patch, and then launch your game. Okay, I am now in game, and you can see the model is pretty much good. The weights are good, textures are fine and everything. By emote and everything, see that all the weights look good. So when I'm looking at the model for weights, what I'd like to do is I either go in game or I check it with the emote. So hug emote is really good for checking out the arms. The at ease one is also a very good one for checking how the arms look. Also do casual salute, which is good for checking out the hand. And looks fine. And then if we go to the armory, if you have access to it, victory poses, specifically squat and shotgun show. I use these ones to check and see how the lower back weight is, as these ones kind of have the biggest lower back weights, and you can see that it's fairly decent. So pretty much this model is weighted pretty much done. Don't need to fix it. Don't need to edit it. If you do run into issues with the weights, you're going to have to play with the weights yourself. I would highly suggest looking up a weight paint video on how to do that, as really the only way to do and learn weight painting and rigging is just doing it yourself and learning based off of that. So now we're going to move on to the next step, which is going to be cutting up the model for usage in a manifest as well as in the game. Because right now, oh, not my game, PC. Okay, so my PC actually blue screened on me when I tried to close Helldivers. That was fun. And now we're going to move on to the cutting phase. So for your Helldiver to have first-person viewport, so like when you're looking down your sights on your gun, and to have the actual arms appear, you need to actually cut your arms up, and then your lower body also needs to be cut up so that it shows in first-person view. If you don't care about that, you can just leave this step and ignore it and just have your entire body part on a single body part. Everything else is invisible, and then your model's done. But I actually like having first-person view, so I'm going to actually change it and cut it up. So I cut up my body into 4 different parts. So arms, so each arm, the lower body, and then the torso. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate I don't need anymore. This. We're just going to rename here. Okay. Don't need that anymore. So to the arms first here. So arms. I'm just going to pretty much find the place where it would kind of make most sense to have an arm cut or really cleanness. So there's a nice little kind of area right here where it'll cut pretty clean right here. So I'm just going to select all the areas where I want to cut it from. Right here. Just going to select the edge as it'll make it easy to select everything. Okay, done. Hide it with H, and I'm just going to press L, link select, and grab everything else on this side. Okay, now I have this entire kind of section of the body cut out. So a thing to note, when you do this, you want to do a split before you do a separation. So what I mean by this is I'm going to save this so I can show you. Let's say I wanted to cut like on a seam and there wasn't actually like a neat part. I just cut it like right through the arm. Let's say I just split it from here. So press P, split by selection. You'll see how there's a very visible kind of like seam that appears. And this is because when you separate something without splitting it first, it recalculates the normal for the vertices. So to prevent this from happening, what you want to do before you do this is you actually want to go here to Mesh, split by selection. So now what it's done is that it's split it, and then when you separate it now, see how it just has like a line instead of being like shaded differently. So now instead of it being a recalculated normal on the edges, it's just cutting it off completely with no recalculation. So I'll show it to you again. I was splitting it, and then this is just separating it. You can see how there's a very visible shading difference between the two versus if I just split it. Time. It's Alt M by selection. See how there's no shading difference. So when you're doing this, make sure that you're actually splitting it before you separate. So for here, we're also going to do another method to prevent seams from pairing. So basically, if you do splits without any overlaps, you're going to have tiny micro seams appear where you can like kind of see through your character. So to prevent this from happening, what we're going to do is where we have this entire area selected, I'm going to Shift D to duplicate it. And make sure my screencast keys are crashed again. So Shift D, and then I'm going to Alt M, split by selection, E to separate. Now I have this extra arm to really quickly go on the other side. Okay, same thing, Shift D, Alt M, split, Alt, Control P, just P, selection, other arm. Final part is the waist. I'm trying to find like a nice little kind of edge to do here. Actually gonna hide this part right here. Oh, okay, never mind. It's already split by itself, so I don't have to worry about that. So I can just do this. Makes this easy. And then because there's no like seam or there's no connecting parts for this where this is being split off from, I don't have to split it by selection because there's no connecting faces or edges. So me just splitting it off, separating it like normal isn't going to do anything. Okay, so for the parts that have connections together and you have seams that are going to appear, what you should do is you should get one face of extra distance. So what I do is I like to keep this one face. I'm just going to select one face of extra vertices here. And then that's good enough. Okay, hide that. And then I'm going to just delete everything else. So all this right here, great, delete. Actually, before I do that, I don't want to mess up my normal shading. I'm going to go to split selection and delete everything. And if I go back here, you'll see I have this kind of like extra one layer. So I'm going to do it the same on this side. And again, this is going to be entirely dependent upon your own model. A little messy. Like all these. Split it off. Okay. And now you see I have extra space on each side. When I bring back the other arms, you'll see that there's a little overlap. So this will prevent there from being seams on the model itself when you load it in game. And now all I'm going to do is I'm just going to move these to the respective parts. So go into the arm parts. Here is I don't need them from the base game. So arm L, R, yeah. And then now I have my 3 body parts. So in totality for this Brawny replacer, I only replaced 5 parts. The helmet, arms, the waist, and then the connections. And then from here, I'll just need to save this and it's good to go. So that's the cutting process. It's fairly simple. You can get more intricate with it because depending on what armor you choose, it may have different body parts that are shared. So if you go to the spreadsheet here, the shared armor parts, you'll see that different armor sets will have different parts that are shared with each other. So the B01 section is really bad. So depending on what you plan to do, you may want to actually cut your body into more parts and pieces, but because I'm doing DP53, which is a 100% unique armor set, it does not matter what I do. I can do whatever I want and won't affect any other armor. So go back to here. I'm going to do a thing where I optimize my model and my textures, and I separate them. And then we're also going to go into manifest creation here. So if you don't have it already, Notepad++ is very good for this. So go over to my folder here. Here, Black Swan. So I have a manifest. In the comments section, I will put a template manifest in there so you can copy it and put it into your own thing, but it does need to be, to make a .json, it's really simple. You just go over here, make a new text document, and then you just change it to JSON, and you have a new JSON, and then just name it manifest. So I have a template from earlier, put over here, this is from my other Spartan. So this is Spartan Black Swan 53. All the, or actually I'll explain each section when I get to it. Just going to set up that part for now. So what I like to do with my mods is I like to separate the textures and the meshes separately because when a game-breaking patch happens, usually it's only the mesh that gets affected. So instead of having to repatch everything, if I have to, I only have to repatch the meshes and not the textures as well. Because sometimes textures have different attributes on them. Like for example, emissive. Check this here. I put an emissive light on this helmet. If we go here, I save this. When I go down to the material for it, so 355, go down here at the material editor. So this is an advanced shader, so it has an emissive controller on it. So let's say it's going to be white, and I want the light to turn on. So I turn to like an emissive intensity of 10, I resave the material, and you'll see the light is on. So in the event that a game-breaking patch happens, I don't have to remember every single value that I did for my materials. So if I have like 20 different materials, I don't have to remember 20 different settings that I used to make this mod in the first place. So that's why I'm going to patch the textures, and I'm going to patch the model separately. So I'm actually going to do that right now. So first, I'm going to actually do the model by itself, and then I'll do the textures. So I like to do helmets and body parts separate from each other. To do only the unit by itself, I turn off this autosave unit materials, so it only saves the unit by itself. So I'm going to do helmet, right patch, go to my data folder, grab this section, and then to straight move it. Just gonna really quickly double check that. Okay, grab this, move it, model. We're gonna call it the next one, DP helmet. Or actually, this is Black Swan already, so I'm just gonna call it DP53 body. Patch. Save all of this. Don't think the armature got reset. Avatar rig. Avatar. Save unit. Cool. That's my body part. That's my body. Now we're gonna do my textures. So HaloReach likes to use a decal map, a giant like decal map for everything. So I want to have my decals as their own kind of patch file because it's something I commonly use for a lot of HaloReach assets. So if I'm going to be making a lot of armor sets using the HaloReach assets, I don't want to duplicate my data file so that it's going to be consistently duplicated across all my mods. I just want to have one specific one that's used for everything. So in that case, I'm going to duplicate this real quick and then separate it by material. Everything else, and then I have my file right here. Turn my autosave materials on again. Save unit. And then remove the unit from the patch file. I just have my material. Right patch. Materials and textures are in there. Move this. All the HaloReach decals. And now essentially, if I ever load a patch with this patch group in conjunction with it, anytime I have a mod that uses my specific material ID, which is this 5501, or the decals for HaloReach, it will properly load those textures that it needs. And from here, all I have to do is I just have to save everything else. So duplicate this helmet again. The decals, I don't want decals in this patch. And because a lot of these parts are shared, I'm actually going to make a lot of mini patches. Material, put this back to 10. Save it. Patch. HaloReach. What's it called? Called the HR. Called again? The HURS. Take that. And pretty much I'm going to do this for every single material that I need or want to separate into different patches. And because I'm going to hyper optimize this, it's going to take me a little bit, so I'll come back once I finish hyper optimizing it. I'm going to poke back in real quick. So I want to mention an example and a technique I like to use called material referencing when I'm hyper optimizing my textures. Let's say, for example, you have a mod where you have like alternate colors and you want to save on texture space. So this is where material referencing comes into play. So the only difference between one material shader and the other, for example, is that the helmets are a different color, right? So I have my blue helmet, and let's just make another dummy material real quick. Create 3, and it's going to use the same normal, same metallic, but this time it's using a black color map, right? So how would I go about making it so that when I'm using both these materials on the same mod, it's using the same textures except for the color? Do this, what you're going to want to do is you're going to have this material. So we have these two, so these two IDs. Right. So take the first one, save it, and then delete the unit like usual. And then record the specific ID, texture ID specifically, of the normal and the metallic that you're using, right? And this is going to be your shared textures kind of deal. And I've done this already. If I go over here to my file, you'll see that for my Gungnir helmet, my normal texture ID is this, and then my metallic texture ID is this. So what ends up happening is I now have a separate patch just for those two textures, right? So if I go here to my Gungnir shared, and I open this patch up real quick, you'll see in here I just have those two textures by themselves in here, right? That right here, those two textures right there. So now, and then when I go and check my Gungnir Cobalt Blue specific one, it has the color texture, and then it has the material. So when I'm making this new texture for the black helmet, save it like usual, delete the unit, remove the two duplicated normal and metallic that comes with it because they're using the same thing, so I'm just going to remove those two. And down here, what you're going to do is first go to settings. You're going to want to turn off save textures with material when you do this. You're going to go here. You're going to change the IDs for these two to what your IDs are. So form R for that, metallic, this. And once you've done that, oh, I actually messed up. I deleted the wrong texture. Go over here. Make sure you delete the two IDs that are actually 468446. My 63 is my color. Go back and do the same. And from here, make sure that this setting's off. You're going to save the material. So now what you've done is now you have a patch where you have your black color helmet with the referenced normal and metallic going to the patch group that has those materials or sorry, not those materials, that has those textured IDs in it. And then you also have in this color patch your color ID and your specific color texture. That's how you can kind of hyper optimize and save on space when you have a lot of shared assets where they use the same neural map, the same metallic, but only the color is different. I've now packed all my textures and all my into their own little folders. Now we're going to move on to manifestation part. So for this, I'm actually going to have texture specific ID icon equal to texture. Swear I have a texture icons. Okay. So I got my images and I got my manifest. So this is my manifest right now. So important thing to note, I'm making it manually so that it is currently compatible with both Helldivers 2 Mod Manager as well as Helldivers 2 Arsenal. So the biggest difference between Arsenal and Mod Manager manifest is that every single section needs to have a description in it in the JSON. If it doesn't have a description, it won't load in Mod Manager, but it will load in Arsenal. So version 1, the GUID, this is going to be your personal, well, not your personal, it's going to be the specific ID that is going to be allocated to your specific mod you're making. So if two mods have the same GUID, they can't be both loaded in the mod manager at the same time. So you want to make sure that you're generating a new GUID every time you make this. This is really easily done. Just go online, type in GUID generator, generate, copy, paste it in here. And then your name, what's going to show up on the manager. So it's going to be this part right here. Description, it's going to be what's going to pop up under here. Icon path is going to be what's going to show up on the main icon. And then options is going to be for your edit options. So there's going to be two types of options. There's going to be the normal option where you can toggle something on and off. So like this, toggle on and off. And then there's the sub option where you can choose between two options for one toggleable option. So to delete most of this as I don't need it. So this is what a sub option would look like. It's basically going to be a name, which is going to be what the option is called. So this is the name, description under here, image that shows up, and then include will be any kind of like files that you want to load with this toggle. So when this toggle is on, no matter which option you choose, it will always load it. And then have sub options. And sub options is going to basically be the same thing as the options above it. So sub options, and then it's a complete copy paste of this down here. Name, description, image, include, and all of that's going to pop up in here in the toggleables. So I don't need any sub options for the mod I'm making right now. So I'm just going to make it without sub options. When I make these Halo helmets and stuff, I like to make them have the helmet be a toggle on and off. What I'm going to do here this and just the include option. And copy this, and then anytime you have an extra option, you want to make sure you have a comma here so that the JSON knows to continue on to the next line. And this is just going to be my textures patch. And then for my textures here, I'm just going to change this to Halo H. I'm going to change this and include every single shared asset in here. That's going to be the same for every single Halo Reach armor I would ever do. When you're doing the include, it's going to be where the root is. So manifest, include, it's going to be textures, backslash, and then whatever is going to be in here. So I'm just going to get every single shared asset. Start with the armor. And you can include as many files as you want in here. Okay, that is all my specific shared assets. Now I'm going to move on to the actual armor toggles themselves, so the helmet and then the body armor. Copy this and add another section for the body armor. Full UD. And then also model itself. Body. armor. Armor gauntlet. Else. Blue pads. Mark 4, Mark 5. Up here, I'm just gonna add a few. Light shared suit decal. Add last thing is the trauma kit. Okay, so this is my manifest. Your manifest probably won't look as long as mine. I like to hyper optimize, so I do have a lot of texture patches, but this is what the manifest will look like. Again, if you are making this manually, you can make this compatible with both the mod managers because you have a description box for every single option. Usually Arsenal, as of the time of making this, Arsenal, when you make it in the Arsenal builder, if you don't have a description, it leaves it empty and it's not compatible with mod manager anymore. We have our manifest. Once you've done that, all you have to do is just go here and then zip up your folder. Zip. And I'm just going to call a Brawny. I'm just going to add this. You look in here, test it, make sure all your stuff's in here. I messed up a little bit here. I think it's not name for it is just Black Swan. I think it's literally just called Black Swan. Black Swan. Okay. Just make sure that when I press the play button, everything launches everything fine. If there's no errors, it'll tell you if you have an error in your line of code, and it'll tell you which line it is, and you can fix it pretty easily. So there's no errors here, so the only thing I have to fix is just the icon. Something I can fix later. I'm just going to deploy this and run it. We'll see in game if it works. And this is the model in game. Looks like the package works. So everything's all good. It's all packaged up. And that is pretty much from the start to the end of how I get my mod for armor specifically, from the beginning all the way to the manifest and at the end. So I probably missed some things and I forgot some things because this was a super long video. The video is like 2 hours long, but I actually spent like around, I want to say 8 hours on this. So if you have questions, go to the modding Discord for help, and I'll try and timestamp this as best as I can, but I'm probably going to miss something. Good luck and have fun with modding.